Hey everybody, Admiral Murphy here, and this week I want to talk to you guys about my favorite Star Trek series. I debated whether I should throw this all together in one video or a bunch of different videos for each series. I decided I want to do that because I'm going to focus on the five main Star Trek series that have been out for a while and I've been able to watch several times. And so each day of the week, I'm going to focus on one episode of the show, do a little video of it for you, talking about it, and we'll work our way from my least favorite Star Trek series all the way to number one. I'm not including Discovery on here because it's too new, it hasn't finished a season, and also, spoiler alert for when I do review it, hasn't been my favorite Star Trek so far, so... But yeah, so Monday, today, I want to bring you guys my number 5 Star Trek series. Just because this one's at the bottom doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. And that is Star Trek Enterprise. It's funny because that was my first Star Trek series. I can remember a little bit of seeing an episode here or there of TNG when I was a kid, but Enterprise was the first series that I really watched, especially around season 3. I know a lot of people are iffy on the show, especially when it comes to season 3. Some people like it, some people hate it. I loved it when it first aired. I think it was what brought me back to the show to figure out what happened each week. But upon rewatching it, definitely it doesn't... I still enjoy that season, but it doesn't stand up to the amazing season 4 that Enterprise had. So I think Enterprise gets a lot of slack because it is a prequel series, and it took a while for them to actually make this show any good. There's this common saying that Star Trek doesn't get good until it's been a couple seasons in. I tend to agree, except the original series started out with a bang. But Enterprise is definitely no exception to that rule. It has a really strong first season opener. Broken Bow is, I think, the strongest two-part start that any of the Star Trek series had. I felt it was a very exciting plot. It was something that it was fast-paced but still felt like Trek, and I was intrigued through it the whole time. And it's a shame that after that episode aired, the show kind of gets a little stale. Season 1, there's a few good episodes that are worth watching, but overall, it just... I liked it a lot when it first aired, but since I was young, I hadn't seen a lot of sci-fi. But after you watch a lot of sci-fi, Enterprise definitely follows some tropes when it comes to science fiction writing. And a lot of its episodes just feel like ideas you've seen either in Star Trek already or other science fiction shows. Especially when you get to season 2. Season 2 is really slow. I have a hard time rewatching season 2 of Enterprise because a lot of the episodes are just not that interesting. And I think part of the problem of this comes into the cast and the characters of Star Trek Enterprise. The characters of the show are just not terribly interesting. And I don't think some of the side characters get a lot of focus. They, especially ones like Hoshi, Mayweather, they don't get... I think they get like 1 or 2 episodes throughout the entire show run, but otherwise they're not really essential characters. And it kind of goes back to some of the flaws you had in the original series, where some of the characters just weren't written well enough. And then a lot of people are iffy on Scott Bakula as the captain. I liked him again when I was younger, but I don't care for him that much now. I actually really hated him as a captain for a while there until I saw Quantum Leap, which is a show a lot of people had seen before he went to Enterprise. And seeing that show definitely gave me a new appreciation for it because I really liked Scott Bakula's acting there in Quantum Leap. I didn't know whether to blame the writers or Scott Bakula himself for just the poor portrayal of Archer. It definitely would appear that it was the writers. He's just not that exciting of a captain. I just find him boring, and I don't like some of the writing they do for him. I get he's like the first one going out there to do stuff, but he's not that great. The cast is just something that some of the characters are good, some of them have some great moments, but otherwise it's kind of lackluster. I think that's where the show really suffered. Now, they might have been a lot better once we get to season 4. I'm going to skip over the Xindi arc because it's a whole series arc, and I enjoyed it as a kid, but yeah, it's what it is. It's got some good episodes in it, but it is definitely an arc. I see what they were trying to do with it, but I think season 4 is where Enterprise really shines through. Season 4 is some brilliant Star Trek. I think this is where the show actually, if they had started the show with this quality of episodes, I think it would have done a lot better than it had. Part of the problem Enterprise has early on in its run is, again, it just had generic sci-fi stories. But when you're doing a prequel series, you have to do stories that show why it's important to tell a prequel story. You're not going to be interested in a prequel unless it ties into something you already cared about in the original work and it has interesting characters, something Enterprise didn't have off the bat for a couple seasons, and that's what's hurt it. But once you got to season 4, them having episodes that dealt with the Klingon augments, explaining that. They had the episode, again, just with the augments and Data's creator. They had episodes that dealt with how the Vulcans came to the teachings of Surak. They had the brief beginning of the Romulan War and how all the Federation races came together. Those episodes were really great. And then there's no forgetting In a Mirror Darkly parts 1 and 2. To me, this is one of the highest, this is one of the episodes I really remember from Star Trek Enterprise. It was just a brilliant concept. And I will never forget, one of my friends was getting into Star Trek, and he wasn't too interested in watching Enterprise, so I pulled out the clip from In a Mirror Darkly, just the beginning clip of that episode, because he had seen First Contact and loved that movie. So I'm showing him the clip, and he's all like, I've seen this movie, why do I got to see this clip again? I told him just to keep watching. Once the scene takes a different twist because it's in the Mirror Universe, he was shocked, and he was like, what the hell is this? And I told him it's an Enterprise episode. You'll have to go watch it and see. And then he went through Enterprise and watched it. Sadly, that's one of the last Enterprise episodes. But also, I want to mention, it's not just season 4 that has some good tie-ins. I think Regeneration in season 2 is actually a really good episode. That one is, I think, my favorite. Especially because as a kid, I remember seeing that episode long before I'd seen anything of the Borg in any of the other Star Trek series. And I was just fascinated with this alien race and not knowing exactly what they are. And they handled that episode really well, especially because everybody knew TNG was the one that introduced the Borg. And they definitely made it seem logical in a way that they could have the Borg in an Enterprise episode. And especially tying it into why we met the Borg in The Next Generation. It kind of gives you more of a reason why Q made us have first contact with the Borg instead of us just naturally having it. Enterprise has a bit of a shaky end. These Are the Voyages is definitely not the episode Enterprise should have been sent out on. My problem with it is they skipped over so many years that the show would have had to tell that story, yet they leave gaps like, oh, now Shran's apparently dead, but he wasn't. But we never saw an episode where he faked his death, so you're just kind of lost when you see that. I mean, you've missed 6 years, supposedly, with this crew between the episode before the finale and the finale. And including the TNG cast in the last episode was definitely a big mistake. A lot of people didn't care how they handled Trip's death in the finale. I was okay with it had they taken out the TNG stuff, especially just blatantly saying he died. So the 2-part episode before the finale, I like to consider that the end of Enterprise because it just really works as a finale for the show, especially the last scene of Terra Prime. If you just watch that scene on its own, and it just feels like the ultimate like Star Trek scene. And it really fits with what Enterprise, I think, was trying to go for as a prequel to the Star Trek universe we got in the original series and everything that followed. The problem with Enterprise and why I rank it so low is because season 4 is all that it really has to offer, I feel, for good Trek. And that's just one season. My number 4 Star Trek series, which I'll cover tomorrow, that one, it switches with Enterprise at times, but in the end, I feel just because it has more to offer than Enterprise, it gets a little higher. If Enterprise would have had a couple stronger series like season 4, hell, if it even had a season 5, I think it would be number 4 on this list. It still has some episodes worth watching, but I definitely understand some of the hate for this show. Now, because I'm a ship geek, I want to talk about the models in some cases here. And I actually do really like the NX model. I don't know, there's just something about it I always liked. I know a lot of people complain it looks like the Akira class, and I agree. But I don't really care for the Akira class design, but I like this one, which is probably weird to some of you out there. But I liked the design of this. I saw this as a logical first Enterprise. This definitely I could see evolving into the Constitution class in the future. And there's the concepts of what the NX class would have looked like in season 5 that are out there. You can see it here. I actually really like that design as well. The thing I think Enterprise gets right that a lot of prequels don't is it definitely does feel like, even though the visuals are of course better than the original series, they still make it feel like the technology in some ways is not as great as the original series had, because the ship doesn't have shields, the shuttle bay is just some drop doors. They just have very primitive weapons. It does feel like this does take place before a lot of the Star Trek we had seen. So that's my opinions on Star Trek Enterprise, my number 5 Star Trek series. Oh, and before I wrap it up, just to rub it in people's faces who hated the Star Trek Enterprise theme song, I'm one of the few who likes it, so roast me on that in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe for future videos, and I will talk to you all next time